You know, when you buy something, you see a price tag. But what's the real cost of getting that product into your hands from halfway across the world? Well, today, we're going to peel back that price tag to find the true cost of our global marketplace. What are the hidden costs we never even see? Let's find out. So, to really get how we got here, we've got to rewind the clock a bit, maybe 50 years or so. Because what happened then wasn't just, a little bit of growth. It was a flat out explosion that completely reshapes the world economy. I mean, just look at these numbers. Between 1950 and 2005, the world's economy grew sevenfold, which is pretty impressive, right? But trade in manufactured goods, that grew 50-fold. 50! That's not just growth, that's a total rewiring of how the entire world does business. We weren't just making more money, we were shipping way, way more stuff all over the planet. So what lit the fuse on this rocket? The answer, at least on the surface, seems pretty simple. Companies all over the world were on one single-minded mission: find the absolute lowest possible price. It basically became the ultimate competitive advantage. Okay, let's really dive into this, because this is where that simple answer starts to fall apart, and you see this much, much more complex reality underneath. That price on the invoice, it's really just the tip of the iceberg, and what's lurking underneath? Well, that can have some pretty profound consequences. All right, so let's zoom in a bit and look at this from just one company's point of view. When a business decides to source a product from overseas, that purchase price they negotiate? Yeah, that's really just the opening chapter of a much longer story. And look, we're not just talking about some simple international shopping spree here. True global sourcing is a seriously complex strategy. It's about integrating and coordinating the whole shebang, from common parts to entire technologies, across a company's worldwide operations. It's this massive, proactive undertaking. Okay, so here is that iceberg, right in front of us. The price tag is floating right there on top, for everyone to see. But look what's underneath. You've got extra shipping fees, warehouses just packed with just-in-case inventory, products literally going out of date while sitting on a container ship. It all adds up. And yet, so many companies still make their decision based only on that visible price, completely missing all these huge costs lurking just below the surface. And, it's not even just about the money. These are the kinds of risks that you're never going to see on an invoice, but they can hit a business's health and competitiveness hard. Longer supply chains mean you just can't react as quickly to what your customers want. You're way more vulnerable to disruptions, anything from a factory fire to political chaos. You can even risk losing your valuable IP or just the trust of your key business partners. Okay, so now let's pull back. Let's zoom out. Because when millions of companies all start making these same kinds of decisions, the hidden costs don't just affect their bottom line anymore. They start to add up and affect, well, all of us. Our infrastructure, our communities, our entire planet. Just let this number sink in for a second. A whopping 95% of the UK's trade by volume arrives by sea. That is a staggering amount of stuff coming in on ships, and it all has to be unloaded, stored, and moved, putting this immense pressure on our ports. And all that pressure, well, it's starting to cause some major problems. Major ports are already hitting their limits, and that means serious congestion. This growth is straining our infrastructure, leading to delays, bottlenecks, and that forces companies to hold even more inventory, just in case. It's this crazy, vicious cycle. Okay, so look, there is some good news here. The UK has actually managed to reduce its overall greenhouse gas emissions since 1990, which is fantastic. But if you dig into the details, one sector is telling a very, very different and kind of worrying story. And this chart, this is where the story gets really interesting. The UK has gotten cleaner in a lot of ways. I mean, check out the drop in emissions from industry and homes. That's great. But transport is the one outlier. All that global shipping and trucking means transport emissions are still climbing, and they're actually on track to become the #1 biggest source of pollution in the UK. And if we dig even deeper into those transport numbers, we see another stark contrast. While emissions from international shipping have been relatively flat, air freight is a whole different beast. International aviation emissions jumped by almost 80% in just a decade. This is the direct result of us wanting stuff from all over the globe and wanting it fast. And this brings us to a really crucial point that honestly gets overlooked all the time. When you move a factory from a place like the UK to a country that relies more on, say, coal power, you're not getting rid of the pollution, you're effectively just exporting it. The product might be exactly the same, but its actual carbon footprint can be way, way bigger simply because of where it was made. So, okay, with all of these hidden costs and massive risks, what's the solution? Where do we go from here? Well, the research shows this really clear dividing line between the average companies and the top performers, and it points towards a much smarter way of thinking. And it pretty much boils down to this simple difference. The companies that are falling behind, they're still obsessed with that one number, the minimum purchase price. But the smartest, top-performing companies, they've already moved on. They use a systematic, comprehensive, total cost approach. They're looking at the whole shebang. So, how exactly are they doing it? What's the secret sauce? Well, it really comes down to a three-step shift in how they think. First up, they use total cost models that factor in everything, not just the price. Second, they manage risk across the entire supply chain, not just in their own backyard. And finally, they actually conduct environmental assessments to understand the true carbon footprint of their choices. Look, global sourcing isn't going anywhere. The world is more connected than ever. So the real question isn't if we're going to do it, it's how we're going to calculate the true cost. Looking beyond the price tag to see the total picture for companies, for our supply chains, and for the planet isn't just a smarter way to do business, and might be the only way to build a future that's truly sustainable. So the next time you see that bargain price, maybe just ask yourself, what's the real cost?